All right, let's talk about how we say our decimal numbers out loud and how we would write them down in word form. So we have our place value chart yet again, because our place values help us to name our numbers, help us to say our numbers out loud. So again, let's quickly review. These are our whole numbers. When you get to the decimal, you are going to pronounce the word and then you're going to say your decimal numbers. I'll tell you how we pronounce those decimal numbers. So, when we're reading our numbers out loud, we are going to read the whole numbers just like we do normally. And you guys mastered that in the last unit. You just pronounce your whole number the way you normally would. Keep in mind your periods if you have those larger numbers like thousands or millions. But you're going to say your whole number normally. When you get to the decimal point, you are going to say the word and. That is your decimal point word. You will not say the word point, you will say the word and. Then what you're going to do is you're going to read the decimal part as a regular number. So then you can ignore everything that is in front of the decimals. You're going to read whatever number is sitting back here as a whole number. And then lastly, you are going to just say what place value that last digit falls in. So then you say you add the place value that the last digit falls in. So let's do an example together. So let's say I've got 0.12. Oops, let me slide that up. If I'm going to say this out loud, I've got 0, and then we're going to look at our decimal number as a whole number. So if there was nothing else, I would simply say the word 12. Now I'm going to look and see, well, what place value is the 2 in 12 sitting in? Well, that's our tenths, hundredths. So this is the same thing as 0 and, for the decimal, 0 and 12 hundredths. Again, because it is sitting in the hundredths place value. Let's do another example together. Okay, let's look at something a little more complicated. We are going to say our whole number like we normally do. That's 205. And we're going to look at this whole number in the back. If I had nothing else, if I covered everything else up, this would be 125. Now we just need to figure out, so we will say 125, and then we just need to figure out what place value that 5 is sitting in. Well, it's sitting in the tenths, hundredths, thousandths place value. So this is the same thing as, again, we start with the whole number, we work from left to right. So this is 200. 5, and that's your decimal point. Now we're going to say this as a whole number, and 125, and again, we got to figure out what place value that's sitting in, tenths, hundredths, thousandths. You got to end your number with what place value the last digit is sitting in. Now let's do something a little bit trickier. So one more example here. Let's say we've got okay. Again, let's start from the left. Let's tackle our whole number. This is 15, and we're going to cover up everything except for the decimal number. And I like to circle it just so I really get an idea of what that whole number is. If you saw that number, well, that's 35. That 0 out in front, if it's a whole number, is meaningless. It's just 35. So we will say 35. Our last step is that we need to figure out what place value the last digit's sitting in. Tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So this is 15. And for the decimal, and again, how would I say that as a whole number? 35, and it's sitting in the thousandths place value. And you've just spelled out that word, 15 and 35 thousandths.